What you can see on screen right now is the tactic that Germany exploited so well and that was a major weakness in the system that Scotland used today and ultimately ended up costing them in their 5-1 loss to Germany, which was, to be fair, a sensational opening game of the Euros. I've been waiting for this moment for about 3 weeks. I did not expect an opening game like that. So fair play Germany. But we'll get into that a little bit more, that secret tactic. But I want to start off by saying I've seen recently a few content creators creating videos about how they reckon Scotland are going to be a team in this Euros competition that teams to watch out for and that actually might be a bit of a force. But if you go and watch my predictions video that I made a few days ago, I said that I just don't think Scotland have the right system, the right personnel, and that just they weren't going to do great. And I feel like today kind of proved my point. Now, I know it's only one game out of, by the way, first game out of 51. I'm not counting, you are. I know it's only one game. There's a lot that could happen. And I do think that there are ways that better teams could actually cause this Germany side problems, and I'll get into that a little bit later. I don't think they were entirely perfect, despite what the scoreline suggested, but I do think that Scotland were just really poor. And if we have a look at the setup that they used today, they began this game in, it was what I thought it was going to be a 5-2-3, ended up being more of a 4-5-1 with McGinn as a right mid. These were kind of the average positions for at least for the first half. And you can see that Germany have set up in this 3-1-6 shape, kind of what we imagined. Mittelstadt held his runs a little bit. He was a bit more conservative as a fullback, and Kimmich wasn't necessarily hugging the byline either, but they are more advanced. They were pretty much in the attacking line more than anything. So it was this 3-1-6 formation that I think we kind of predicted Nagelmann was going to use, with Kroos in this left centre-back position, kind of hybrid with his midfield position as well, that we've seen him play at Real Madrid pretty much this season, the entire way through the season. Let's give Kroos the ball right now. What I really enjoyed when Kroos got the ball was the fact that he could do a little bit of a zoop. His passing was incredible today. So good. And the space that he had to find players like Kimmich or Mittelstadt or some line-breaking balls into like Gundogan, he did it so often today. And I think that Scotland almost invited this on. When you've got a player like Kroos, you have to make sure you don't give him space to play these kinds of passes. And yet I think Steve Clarke today set his team up in a way that just afforded Kroos all the time in the world to do what he wanted. And this is by Scotland having this 5-4-1 formation. It meant that Che Adams was pretty much the only player pressing the entire back line. So half the time he was blocking Andrick in his cover shadow, but when he did go and press, say the ball's with Tar, he did go and press. He couldn't really press all three of them at once. He can maybe block one passing lane, but then you've got Andrick in a load of space, Rudiger in space, and to be fair, the ball ends up at Kroos's feet quite often. And I mean, when he did go and press, you found Andrick in so much space in the midfield as that single pivot that it was just a simple ball into him, or Gundogan could drop a bit deeper and it was a simple ball into him. We saw that so often, and it really cost Scotland. And they did actually change this. We'll get into that in a few minutes. But the first goal came, 1-0 came within about, 10 minutes. Kroos picked the ball up in this position, funny enough, and Kimmich was free on this right-hand side, and the ball comes into him where he attacks a little bit, cuts it back, and I think it was Wirtz on the edge of the box who kind of took the shot and it went in. And I thought Gunn should have done a little bit better. I feel like he could have saved it, but okay, he didn't. 1-0 when we're already in problems. But I do think, going back to that tactic that I said about at the beginning of this video, it's the distances between the Scotland lines. Distances in football are so essential. And whilst they're still, I regard them as one of the basics in football, but to perfect them is incredibly difficult. And the distances between the defensive line and the midfield line for Scotland today were not great enough, and it afforded so many pockets for the number 10s like Musiala, Gundogan and Wirtz to drop into and pick the ball up. As you can see here, this was the average positions. You can see McTominay and McGregor in these positions here. You can almost see this kind of, you can almost see in, if we go into this shape, that you get this pentagon, going back to my GCSE maths here, this pentagon shape that whilst Kai Havertz was kind of occupying Hendry, Gundogan, Wirtz and Musiala were so narrow and so tight in their attacking line, it meant Robertson was tucking inside a bit more and afforded Kimmich all this space on the right hand side, which is how Kroos was constantly able to find him. And similarly, Mittelstadt was in a similar position. But it meant that when the ball did come into the likes of Gundogan, they could take it on the half turn and then play a crucial defence splitting ball beyond this midfield, beyond the Scotland defensive line, sorry. And as I said, Wirtz got the first goal. The second goal didn't come too differently. I think it was a 3-5, maybe a 4 versus 5 against the Scotland defence. But again, it came with picking the ball up in the pocket, and then it was a horrible defence-splitting pass that fell to Kai Havertz, and it was a really good pass. He then held on to it, cut it back to Musiala, who absolutely thumped it past Angus Gunn. Can't really blame him for that one, at least. It was the same routine, and again, in about, what was it, the 25th minute mark? I can't remember the exact time, maybe half an hour mark. There was that penalty shout that was actually turned out to be a free kick in the end, but again, it came from a similar system. Gundogan dropped deep and picked the ball up in their pockets in between the midfield and the defensive line, and I think he found Mittelstadt in the end, who played a brilliant cross in, came to Musiala and was fouled just outside the box instead. And at the half an hour mark, I think almost just after this moment, Scotland changed their system a little bit more. They, not drastically, but Christie went to a right striker position. And in doing, a left striker position, and in doing so, it just meant when Kroos or Tar or Rudiger did have the ball, one could press the player, almost forcing them. So if, say, Tar's got the ball, Adams could press him to force the ball into Kroos, while Christie was able to block the pass off to Andrick, kind of cut the passing lanes a little bit more, and vice versa. I mean, they could force the ball to Rudiger, make sure it couldn't come to Kroos. Christie kind of covered Andrick. There was a little bit more that they could do this way, but it did then open up the midfield. I really wanted to see Ralston and Robertson pin Kimmich and Mittelstadt much deeper, so that Wirtz had to come wide, and then Gundogan had to come into the half space just to give that team a bit of width in the attack. But instead, where they just sat so narrow and deep, it gave Kimmich and Mittelstadt all the time in the world to come and make these runs. But I also think it's these runs that could cost Germany against better teams. If I feel like teams that are really good on the transition and really quick counter-attacking teams, such as almost France, I feel like Hungary could be one of them as well. I feel like if they get in this position with Kroos slightly more advanced, you do have all this space here for oppositions to attack. Now, if you had more of a 4-3-3 system going on here, I know McGregor's not a left wing, but just for example, it's much easier to attack these channels and commit runners just a little bit easier to catch this German team out on the transition, because defensively they're not very good, or they're not very quick at least, at transitioning from attack to defence. And a big reason for this, which was a massive upside to their game today, was their press. Now, obviously, they're Germans. They invented the counter-pressing system, and it worked so effectively, and it worked really well today. But also when Scotland did get the ball in their defensive third, or when they won it, Germany immediately pressed man for man. Like, I mean, not exactly how I've got it here, but they went almost, it was probably more like this, more for a man-for-man system, regardless of how it looked. They prevented there ever being a spare man for Scotland to find other than the goalkeeper, and as soon as it came to him, he just had to kick it along, and it was Tar and Rudiger sweeping up the entire time. So they never really were able to break out of their own defensive half. Then we come to the 41st minute, 42nd minute. Again, ball comes out wide to Kimmich on the right-hand side, as you can see on screen right now. And he puts the cross in where Musiala, Kai Havertz and Gundogan are all in the box. I think it falls to Gundogan, takes a shot. The ball kind of bounces around a little bit. And then Porteous comes sliding in with this horrifying tackle that as soon as I saw it, you could tell it was not a good tackle. I thought the penalty would be given straight away, but thankfully VAR reviewed it, gave it, and obviously Porteous was then sent off. And I thought at half-time it was really interesting that Steve Clarke didn't go for maybe a 4-3-2 formation or a 4-4-1 formation in the second half, just to have that extra body going forward rather than staying in a 5 at the back. He did stay in the 5 at the back, moved Christie to striker, and they defended in a 5-3-1 or at times even just a 5-4 in a really low block. And it just then meant when they did win the ball, there was no obvious out ball. They were almost stuck. Obviously, then it became 4-0. And at that point, game's over anyway. But if it wasn't, it definitely was now. Fulkrog's had a brilliant season. Takes it on the almost like the half volley, smashes it in that top right corner. Phenomenal finish. And then at least Scotland fans did get something to cheer about. It was a deep free kick that actually I don't think Germany defended very well. It came across that McKenna just tried to header it back across goal. And I don't know if Rudiger's trying to just look at where the ball's gone or header it behind for a corner. I don't really know what he's doing. But then obviously he scores the own goal. So at least it went 4-1. Germany lose their clean sheet. And I don't think Nagelsmann will be very happy about that. But Emre Can at the edge of the box in about I don't even know what minute it was. What was it, like the 90th, 92nd minute, something like that. Was the spare man on the edge of the box and just curls it into that bottom right corner. Phenomenal finish as well. Considering he wasn't even in the squad 48 hours ago, pretty good goal. I do think, however, as I said, Scotland are going to struggle in this tournament. They're a low block team. If you're going to be a low block team, you have to be so defensively sound. And I feel like today they were a low block team that lacked incredibly in defence. There were so many channels for the opposition to exploit. I thought Musiala was phenomenal today. If you have a look at his dribble stats, I think he took on more dribbles than anyone else in the team in the game today. And Wirtz as well, picking up the little half spaces, was phenomenal. But I really want to put my praise on Gundogan. I think he was really, really good. Dropping into them half spaces centrally, a lot of the German attacks came through the middle of the pitch. Obviously, because they attack with such a narrow front four almost with the 3 number 10s and Havertz, and then it's Kimmich and Mittelstadt that provide the width. A lot of their attacks were kind of in the half spaces, and that meant that they could kind of attack the channels in between the fullbacks and the centre backs, or in between the centre backs even. There was a lot to look from this Scotland game that maybe went all right, but I feel like there's a lot to work on, and they kind of need a win. I mean, if they get a win, they might scrape through in third position, and they might stay in the tournament, but they really desperately need a win, and I can't see where it's going to come personally. I do worry for them. As much as I really want them to do well, they have a lot of players that I really like. I like McGinn, I like Adams, I really like Tierney, and McTominay has a lot to offer attacking-wise, but they just don't have it for me, and Germany do, and that was what changed the game today. Fair play, Germans. Not something I'm going to say very often, but they were really good today. I do think, as I said, they can get counter-attacked quite easily against the better side. I don't think they're unbeatable, but I do think if they keep going with this kind of press that they initiated today, it was phenomenal and they will go far. So they're certainly a side not to mess with. So I'll keep an eye on Germany as a team that I don't really want England to have to play. But regardless, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments, what did you think of this opening game? I mean, there's not really much to say, I guess, but also let me know your predictions for the top scorer of this competition. I'm interested to see who you think it could be. But if you want to go see my predictions for this tournament, go and check that video out right here. But until next time with another Euros video, I will see you very soon.